Good morning, everyone. Michelle asked me to come and talk about some of the workforce resources that we have at Deed, and we have quite a few. But some of it is just kind of regional planning, working with industry sector partnerships and other support we have is more specific, the programming. So I'm going to talk about the programming today from Deed and our partners. So I know everybody's really thinking a lot about the labor market and the workforce shortage. I know it's affecting the economy at large. It's affecting your businesses individually. I personally think, one of probably the most important thing that you can do when we have a tight labor market like we have is to really know your labor market information. And at Deed, we invest a ton of resources and time into developing data tools that most states don't have at the level that we have. And so I mean, I might be a little biased because I started out in the labor market information office, but I've seen what North Dakota has. I've seen Wisconsin's platforms, and they're not even close to what we have. So I highly encourage everybody to take time to really get to know the details of the labor market, get into the weeds, learn about it. I've listed here a handful of our data tools and that I think are helpful for employers specifically. I'll kind of just start from the top here and talk a little bit about what each one is. The first is county profiles. And at this group, we went over the Pennington County profile, I want to say in the spring, Michelle. And those are good to look at because it gives you a snapshot of different data sets, most of the different data sets that we have at the state. So it's kind of a good local overview. We update those once a year, but data sets are updated throughout the year. So if you see something that in that you think, gosh, it'd be good to see if there's updated information, you can always just reach out to us, myself or Cameron, and we will make sure you get updated information. Otherwise, they get updated every late summer, early fall. The next is occupation and wage data. This is also regional. You can look at very specific jobs. You can look at job categories. You can look at wage ranges. So we have the median wage there, but we also have, the percentiles. So kind of like, what is the range from the 10th percentile, so the lowest wages in that occupation, to the 90th, so the highest in the region. So when we're competing for workers, as we are at this point, this is very important to keep an eye on. As is the next one, the job vacancy survey. We survey 10,000 employers twice a year to gather information about the number of current vacancies. And just as important as occupation and wage data, median wages, the job vacancy survey has median vacancy wages or median wage offers. And so you can see what your workers should be earning, your existing workers based on the overall median. So for retaining workers, et cetera. And then for hiring people, you can look and see what the competition or your industry is offering on average for new workers. So those two data sets are really important. I would regularly take a look at those. Next is employment projections. This one is more about the future. If you're doing some long-term planning, we've tried to project out what kind of jobs are going to have growth over the next 10 years, which are going to have, there's going to be fewer of them. So if, for our purposes, we look at that and we see if there's a job category or an occupation specifically that's growing a lot, we want to invest in the training and the support system for that career pathway. For your purposes, if you see that there are jobs that are are growing in a particular area, there was going to be probably more competition for those workers because there's more demand for that type of skill set. So not as critical to go look at it all the time, but I think it's still an important one to look at. Commuter patterns is also, I think, very important to understand. There's a lot of different ways to look at commuting patterns, but to have a good understanding of whether your local area or your region is drawing workers in or exporting more workers is really important. And not just your immediate area, but also the surrounding area. So think about, a 30 or 40 mile radius around where your business or organization is. And you can look and see, are people from that larger area, are they going out or are they coming towards you? And in some cases, you might be capturing a lot of the local area, but you might not be capturing, the next level out. And so there might be opportunity to market more to that region. You can also look at if there's a particular geography where people are traveling more to your region, or people from your region are traveling more to think through, hey, maybe we really need to market more to Grand Forks, for example, or another area where there might be a lot of traffic going back and forth. You're just seeing a trend where people are more willing to travel. Cost of living is also, we hear more and more from job seekers. What they're looking for is balance between life and work. So for an employer to understand what it takes for today's job seeker to make ends meet, especially if they have a family, this is a really helpful tool to go in and really try to understand the people that you are attempting to hire and bring into your organization, and what their needs are outside of work. Local unemployment rates and regional unemployment insurance. We've talked a little bit about these back and forth, and I'm going to actually go in and we're going to show a little bit about what that looks like right now. I think understanding the difference between these two things is very important. We looked a lot at unemployment insurance during the pandemic, but I think now that some of the federal bump programs have ended, we're going to be focusing more on unemployment rates more generally. And so we'll talk again a little bit about what the differences between those, and look at some current numbers. So unemployment insurance categories. So these got talked about a lot during the pandemic. I think people were more interested in who's getting unemployment, and so we have three different categories. One is initial claims. Initial claims is important because it tells us if there were a large swath of folks making a claim in one particular month from an industry and local area. So, if we see that there were 100 claims in September for manufacturing, that kind of tells us, wow, that's a big portion of workers who are in transition. That's going to affect the economy. It helps us think through about what kind of second, third order effects might come from that. So we always keep an eye on initial claims. Regular claims would be, after the application is made and someone makes their first claim and receives their first payment, then they are able to receive regular unemployment for about 6 months. If they like, they don't have to take it for 6 months. If they find a job before that, they don't need to continue. But regular unemployment insurance, like non-pandemic, anything like that, lasts for about 6 months. So we keep an eye on this to see if people are staying on that, or if they're finding work sooner than the 6 month time period. Excuse me. But included in that in recent numbers was also PUA, which is the Public Unemployment Assistance. And that included folks who are self-employed or contract workers. So we'll look at some of those numbers. Extended claims. So this is what happened during the pandemic, where unemployment insurance was extended. It also happened in 2009 when we had the recession. Then the federal government extended unemployment. So when we look at those numbers, it'll be really that, and then the pandemic on emergency unemployment compensation, which includes the federal bump payment that ended in September. So take a quick look here at where we're at. And what I've done is I have numbers for September from this year and then the past 2 years. Last year, so that we can compare what's changed since the middle of the pandemic last September, and then what's changed since 2019, which was pre-pandemic. And so what we can see here is that in September, we had 277 initial claims for unemployment insurance. This is in the 7-county Northwest area. And that's down almost half from last year, but it is up still considerably from 2019. For regular, you can see it's kind of the same. It's except, much fewer regular payments than last year at this time. And because, of course, included that was PUA. And then, but we're still up quite a bit from 2019. And so this could be folks that made their initial claim this summer. And, they still have that 6 months to use. So if, as the Delta variant kind of came back, maybe there are more people who were stepping away from work or laid off because of that. Not to speculate too much, but so we still have a number of people receiving just that regular unemployment that'll expire here within 26 weeks. And then finally, they extended. As you can see, that's been ended now. In 2020, there were 400 some claims. There are none this September because they ended. So I did want to point out the largest increases in initial claims in September. So current first-time claims were in healthcare, retail, and wholesale trade. In healthcare, the number of initial claims is almost quadruple what it was in 2019. So we're seeing a lot of people leave the healthcare industry. We see that retail, obviously, another one where there's a lot of interaction amongst people. Wholesale trade, I assume that has something to do with just we have such a large wholesale trade employer here, and so there's just more jobs in that category. But
Chet,
yeah,
and Kiki may have some insight on this as well. Do you know why there were so many initial claims, or that they were quadrupled for healthcare? Because that's really a large increase.
Yeah, and I don't know. I really don't want to speculate too much, but we do hear a lot of healthcare employers or employees saying that they've been exhausted. It's been a really hard couple of years of work. So I don't know if Kiki.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. Just burnout. And then also the mandates, the vaccine mandates, and masking mandates have also contributed somewhat to that. So
Thank you. That's kind of what I suspected, but
So that, like I was saying, we looked at unemployment a lot, during COVID, and I think we should still keep an eye on it more. But as we move forward, I think it's as or more important to start looking more at the traditional unemployment rate, because what we saw is during the pandemic, a lot of people were on unemployment insurance, but a lot of them left the labor force altogether. And so our labor force is still down from pre-pandemic in terms of numbers. And so I think our best metric moving forward is to keep an eye on the labor force and say, who is it, which direction is it going? Is it continuing to decline? Are we stabilizing? Are we adding people? So we have this information is released on a monthly basis by county, even at some local levels. And the labor force includes anyone who's working or actively looking for work. So typically in Minnesota, this is about 70% of the population over 16 years of age. Currently, I think we're down to about 68%. which may not sound like a big decrease, 2% decrease, but when you're talking about a labor force of almost 3 million people, it does add up to quite a bit. So the unemployment rate then is, the number of people within the labor force who are looking for work. So it's kind of low hanging fruit. It typically says, these are people that are looking for work that we should be able to place. They don't have as many barriers to work, or sometimes they do, but they're looking anyway. And so when we can't place them, it kind of tells us that there's some level of productivity in our economy that we are not meeting. And so that's kind of why the unemployment rate is typically pretty important and popular metric, but right now our unemployment rate is so low that it's, I think, more important to be looking at the labor force numbers. So look at our local area unemployment data. So quickly, again, the difference between the two, regular unemployment rate that's collected through federal unemployment surveys done by the Department of Labor. So some people who are some people who are unemployed receive unemployment insurance. They make those claims, but not all of them. So this definitely captures a different data set. So as you can see from pre-pandemic, our labor force is down about 2,500, or I'm sorry, about 1,100. I don't think I have that number right. That looks like a little bit more than 1,100 there. Sorry about that. But so it looks like we are down about almost 3,000. I would say 2,500-ish. And we are down a little bit less, but our number of unemployed people is about the same. And so interestingly, our unemployment rate hasn't changed in 2 years. So this is just an indicator that, ignore these bottom numbers. I'm really sorry about that, you guys. I didn't change those from the previous one. But what's interesting is that our unemployment rate has not changed. Even so, if you just looked at that, you'd say, oh, that's about the same. However, if you look at the labor force, you can see that it's down considerably. So that's why I think we need to keep an eye on this metric more than anything. The number of decrease, though, is not that much of a surprise. I think it's happened faster than we expected, but even pre-pandemic, we had been projecting labor force through 2030. Now this is EDR1 Northwest Minnesota. We're projecting labor force to decrease by almost 5% through 2030. And so even before the pandemic, because of demographic changes, specifically like this age group, this 55 to 64-year-old age group, that were leaving the labor force in large numbers, we're expecting a big decrease. Interestingly, though, this group is so large that they're also expected to add. A lot of them are expected, more of them are expected to stay in the labor force in their 60s and 70s than the previous generation. So even though we're losing a lot, we're also have an opportunity to capture more folks in their senior years at work. So something to keep in mind there. I think this just kind of demonstrates, though, that while COVID was a huge shock to our labor force and certainly sped up some things, the decrease in labor force was not unexpected. We've been talking about this for some time here. Okay, so I just wanted to show a few of our data sets and why I think that's really important. Again, I really encourage you to go back and look at the tools. If you have questions about stuff, if you ever want to talk about it, give me a call. I'm happy to kind of talk through some of the data there. So some of the other resources that we have at DEED, I wanted to point out, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with minnesotaworks.net, but I wanted to make sure to bring it up here because at DEED, we've been making calls to thousands of folks on UI since last spring and letting them know about different training and work opportunities available to them. And they are all referred to post their resume on minnesotaworks.net. Now, a lot of those folks have come back to work since September, but we're still making those calls to those who are on unemployment currently, and still encouraging them to use the MinnesotaWorks.net system. So I know a lot of you are familiar with that, but I did want to point out that there is a national labor exchange as well. And if you're not using that, I would encourage you to use that as well, especially since we're so close to North Dakota here. If you'd like to advertise to workers over there, you can use the National Labor Exchange. And they have a really great function here called job vacancy indexing, which is if you have your jobs posted on your website, the National Labor Exchange can actually scrape those jobs from your website and just pull them automatically. So you don't have to hand jam them in everywhere, and probably save you a lot of time. Even better is that they will then auto-populate to MinnesotaWorks.net and the North Dakota Labor Exchange. So you don't have to put them in two different sites. You can just ask the National Labor Exchange to pull from your website and do all the work for you. So a great resource, something to know about. Trying to share that more and more because I think it can save people a lot of time and reach multiple markets that way. And then we have a number of training programs for probably different types of workers, I guess you could say, different talent pools. One is a SciTech internship program. It provides $2,500 to mid-sized businesses to hire college students in a STEM field for an interim basis. You know, of course, the idea I think would be to try to hire them full-time at some point, but it's really to get college students hands-on experience and to help bridge employers to, you know, our education system that way, specifically in STEM. So manufacturing would play, you know, this would serve that industry well. Healthcare for sure, and others. And so I encourage you to go take a look at that. There's a one-to-one cash match, but it can definitely help. It's not just the $2,500, but the resources associated with it to help you connect with college students and make sure that they have a successful experience with your organization. The Minnesota Job Skills Partnership. This is a big fund we have at the state, and most of it is managed by DEED. Basically, if you have you want to develop some in-house training, you can work with an accredited college, and so typically Northland in our area, to develop some curriculum and training for your employees, for either existing employees or new employees or both. You know, this can be really long-term project, you know, 1 to 3 years, where you're really building training at different levels on different equipment, you know, for your employees can continue to upskill while they're there. And, you know, we help fund this. I think, you know, Kirsten is here. She runs customized training at Northland. Kirsten, I don't know. I don't think you guys have used MJSP in a while, but you certainly have customized training. Do you want to say anything about that and what you do with employers?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience working with MJSP grants over the years. And yeah, it's usually to do training on site with the company to help upskill your workers. And I'm more than happy. I usually write the grants myself, so I don't put that pressure on the business. And we work together to submit that as a partnership.
Yeah, and again, for new or existing employers, there's a match again. If you're training or hiring low income workers, we can actually lower that match. It can be 0.5 to 1. So anyway, Kirsten is a great resource for that, for this program. And encourage you to take a look at it. Also with the Minnesota Job Skills Partnership, we have a couple other grants. If you're doing training yourself, or you have another organization that's not an accredited institution, you can apply for the Job Training Incentive Program. It's similar in that it will help pay for training new hires. You can receive up to $200,000 for that. It can go to pay for the training, or it can go to pay for other things associated with the training. For example, you can use it to pay training wages during, a training period, or space, or other things like that. So sometimes people think it's only for hiring an outside trainer or something like that. That's certainly not the case. You can use it for a variety of things during the training period. So, and really important to note that this is for Greater Minnesota only. So it's a really good resource for our businesses outside of the metro. And the pay is 120% of the federal poverty guideline. So we've actually changed that, lowered that now. So when your new hires are done with their training, they have to be earning 120% of federal poverty guidelines. So that seems to have made it more accessible. Also with MJSP is the automation training incentive program. This is relatively new, but we see a lot more automation taking place with the labor shortage. And this program will help you to train workers on a new piece of equipment that you purchase, or to train them in another part of your business if that piece of equipment takes up some of their work. So if you need to retrain them somewhere else. Again, Greater Minnesota only, and same pay rate at 120% of federal poverty guidelines. These programs are really easy to participate in. We have program managers who will walk through them with you. They're non-competitive. It is literally just funds there available for you to leverage for taking on or training existing employees. So something that keeps coming up, I know we've talked about some different training funds here and grants, but what I hear is, but Chet, we still don't have the people, right, to even train. And so what I'd like to kind of try to get across is that the best way to use these programs is to build career pathways within your organization, so that when you are competing for workers, you can show them that there is a long-term plan there. There is a place for them to grow, place for them to continue to grow in responsibility, in earnings. What we hear almost always from job seekers is the thing they don't want is something that they consider, for either real or perception, a dead end job. And so the more that you can sort of paint the picture for them that your organization is a place where they can thrive in the long term, and there is a place for them to move up, earn more, the better. It's going to help you stand out amongst your peers when you're competing for workers. So one thing we've done here is we've put together a series of visualizations to show career pathways in different industries. These are just examples. I would encourage you to think about building something similar for your organization that you can actually show a job seeker at an interview or at a job fair. I'm just going to click on this quick and I think it'll go to it. Are you guys seeing this okay? Great. So again, this is like a visual that we've developed. I think that the wage data here is a couple years old now, but we can certainly update it. And it basically shows, okay, here are jobs at each level of education. So these are really based on kind of education and post-secondary level. But within the construction, these are the jobs you can earn at each kind of level of education. And here's kind of the earnings that you can receive or expect to receive in our region. However, if you are just doing, training in-house, which I know a lot of employers do, and it's not necessarily correlated with education level, it's more about, their skill and their productivity. I think it's still just as important to be able to demonstrate or show visually how, their progression, will take place and occur within your organization. We hear a lot of employers say, just come, work hard, and, you'll do well. But unfortunately, that just isn't good enough, I don't think anymore. And job seekers want to see specifically how they can grow, how their wages will increase over time, how they can upskill, et cetera. So, so we do have a lot of training programs. Of course, we have, Career Force of Minnesota works to try to help you connect with job seekers. But when you're out there competing for workers, I think this is one of the most important things you can do. We will go back here. So we have, if you go to this top link, and we'll send this out, we have some of these, we have these infographics, as we call them, for a handful of different industries. But I would encourage you to develop something in-house as well. What else can employers do now? These are probably pretty simple. You probably thought about these yourselves, but we like to reiterate, use plain language in your job postings. Oftentimes I hear employers say, we'll hire anybody, even if they don't have experience, and we'll train them ourselves. But then in the job posting, it has all this technical jargon, about the industry or the job that someone without any experience would have no idea, how to understand that. And so probably back away pretty quick. Social media, social media isn't for everybody, but I don't think it's, I think it's unquestionable that it has a lot of power for spreading word of mouth about how good of a company you are to work for. So I would definitely try to leverage social media when you can. You guys are all here, so I know you're interested in helping explore barriers like transportation and childcare. We've talked about that, but continuing to get involved in your community, to think about, those pieces outside of the workplace that affect the labor force and the economy and your workers, I think is really important. So engage your community as often as possible. I did want to mention that on that note, we do have the IWE designation. If you're again looking to separate yourself from your peers and be recognized for having an inclusive workplace. These are the 4 criteria. And the way we got these is when we developed this designation, we went and talked to businesses who had done well in this area and had built a diverse and inclusive workplace. And these were the 4 things that they were doing in some shape or form. And so these weren't just we didn't come up with them, out of the blue. We had a lot of input from employers and businesses thinking about this. And so, again, make a public commitment, assess, how inclusive you are. And this might be like reviewing your employee policies, et cetera. You might, and we have some other tools for that. Provide some kind of training. I know Janelle's done some training. A lot of you have attended. That's great. Also, you might want to think about some training through Kirsten or the community and technical colleges have developed some inclusive workforce training that talks about intercultural communication. Some more practical type training. That's really good. And then last, think about how do you weave this into most of what you do in your organization? How do you sustain this work? Again, if that's building relationships in the community, that's a great step. If it is creating a platform for different cultures within your organization to be heard, that's another way to do that. Why would an employer participate in this? Well, first of all, we know that the data is showing that our labor force is becoming more diverse all the time, and that employers have had a harder time retaining workers of color, not just in our region, but most of greater Minnesota. So turnover rates for people of color are sometimes twice as high for the white population than the average. So it kind of shows that employers are trying to hire more diversity. They're willing to, but they don't always have the tools to manage a multicultural organization. And so that's what this program is really here for, to give businesses a starting place, a path to follow, a support system of local leaders, a community of practice with other businesses who are also trying to develop a more inclusive workplace. And then ultimately, one of the main points is to increase the size of your applicant pool, to use, to talk about the work that you're doing as a promotional tool to say, we are building this workplace to reach out to talent pools that you may not have connected with in the past. So that is one of the main benefits there. We also have developed something locally here called the Justice Involved Workforce Pipeline. We work close with Intercounty to develop this, and we really have just sort of mapped out what the process is for somebody who is just being released from the correction system or the justice system, or someone who's on probation to get to work. Sometimes there are some barriers there because a company might have some restrictions on who they will or won't hire based on what someone was in the system for. And so what we really wanted to do here was, we talked to folks in the jails, in probation, and we try to get a feel for which job seekers are, in their opinion, ready for full-time work, are ready to succeed and make that transition. And when we come with that recommendation from those folks, businesses seem to be more flexible in their restrictions. And we also get them hired on an OJT contract with Intercounty so that we can help pay for half of their wages for a training period or probation period of 90 days or so. So we'll take a little bit of the risk out of it for an employer who's hiring someone from the justice system. If it doesn't work out, you don't have so many sunk costs. Here's a quick graphic on kind of how this works. Starting from one over here, employers interested, and make sure they have their stuff on Minnesota Works, and work with myself and John Price from Intercounty. Our corrections partners and our probation partners have their probates complete. It's kind of a generic application when they're ready. And then we enroll them in adult services through WIOA. And then when we make a match with an employer who's ready to hire, then we set up that OJT contract. So we have a number of organizations kind of providing employers in this. Mike's been involved in some of those calls in the past, and other regional employers. We are receiving job seekers from ABE, the jails, from the probation team, and really trying to make this match and try to make it easy for employers to hire them by mitigating the risk. And then finally, I wanted to touch on our new website at Deed. We are really trying to market in Minnesota outside of the state borders, really to the world at large. It's called Join Us Minnesota. Our tagline is Build What Matters in Minnesota. It's about business and talent attraction. And we highlighted the local talent attraction program, the Where Two Rivers Meet on the website, amongst some of the other local talent attraction programs that have popped up. But that is there. And, I'm hoping to make it even more prevalent there, where maybe we can get links to some of our videos there. So either talent or businesses looking from the outside in can get a view of Thief River Falls and why it's a great community. So Michelle is also going to help us, by, sharing information about Thief River Falls that we can get up there. Did you want to say a few words about that partnership, Michelle?
Oh, just this new platform, joinusmn.com, is, I think it's an exciting opportunity for us, and we want to make sure that our area is really represented there. At this point, I don't think it is as much. Most of the properties that are available for sale and so forth are down in the metro area, but we're going to work on getting our area opportunities listed there. Not only, as you mentioned, attracting people, but also attracting businesses. So it's two-sided.
Yeah, so that's what I had today. I know we went over some of those pretty quick, so if you have questions, and I'm always here to just chat about it. I love to hear your thoughts, and there are a lot of details to some of these programs that we can talk about, think through whether or not they'd work for you and your organization. So that's what I'm here for. So thank you.